Spring football cranking up tomorrow morning, 7:55 a.m. The gaggle of media will be out there. We'll be watching them run around cones. We'll be watching them high knees, maybe tackle a dummy here or there. There will be some whistles involved, maybe a helmet or two. It'll be quite the scene out there on the Ponderosa tomorrow morning. But I wanted to kind of get you ready for it a little bit, just kind of refreshing with the roster and the depth chart, because quite frankly, and I said this yesterday, like I need it. I need to look over things because I couldn't come up with it perfectly at this point in the calendar. Once they beat Purdue, guys transfer out, transfer portal kind of closes up, even though there was one that added yesterday. I pretty much slammed the door on it. I was like, all right, I'm going to basketball and baseball. I'll see you with this when the spring happens. And I think most people are not like me in that regard. They want to lock in and be aware of the football program all the time. But I gotta close that book every once in a while. Just being honest with you. But I can open it right now, and I did yesterday. I sat there and chatted with Matt in the stairwell earlier this morning about who started at what spot on the offensive line last year. Sometimes it comes and goes. But this LSU offensive line, as I go through it, looks to be in pretty good shape. I think they might be one or two short on depth, but as far as front end goes, I think the line looks to be pretty good. And that's something we said immediately when Brian Kelly took over the job here at LSU. Said, look, he's got some reputations in college football, and one of them is that he hires good people. Most of the people that Brian Kelly hire elevate themselves or prove themselves worthy to stick around for a good period of time. And the other thing is they've had great offensive lines and tight ends at Notre Dame. And that went back to Cincinnati as well. So you figured, and look, Brian Kelly said this in his introductory press conference. I remember it. He said, a lot of really good offensive linemen. How? So we have a profile, and we identify players that meet that profile, and we bring them in, and they have a course that they usually run, and we feel like we can kind of keep that pipeline open. And it was easy to go back into the Mike McGlincheys and all the guys he brought in at Notre Dame that became first-round picks, and there were a lot of them. Quentin Nelson, and he had a lot of great offensive linemen. And most of them were tall and lean and filled out over time and kind of asserted themselves in their second year in the program and became All-American type players. That's been kind of the MO. And last year kind of bucked that in a way, but it was out of necessity, where you brought in two highly thought of, lean, physical offensive linemen. They just didn't have the luxury of taking a year to fill out and develop because they had to play now. And that became apparent really early with Will Campbell in spring football last year, that he was going to be the left tackle, and they were going to fill in the blanks from there. And then after one game, Emory Jones was plugged in at right tackle, and they said, okay, that's what we got to do. So you come back with your bookends at tackle, which is absolutely vital in an offensive line. You got Will Campbell at left tackle. You got Emory Jones at right tackle. Miles Frazier comes back after a really strong first year in Baton Rouge. Charles Turner started 12 games last year at center. Had to make that move after the Florida State game just didn't go very well. You've got Garrett Dellinger, who started 6 games, played in 9, dealt with some injuries, but played center, played guard. You lose Bradford, but Marlon Martinez is back as well. So you feel like if you go from left to right, you've got Will Campbell, you got Miles Frazier, you've got Charles Turner, and then you've got Garrett Dellinger and Emory Jones. That's a pretty good start to an offensive line, with Marlon Martinez coming back as a swingman. He played in 12 games last year, made 1 start against UAB. And that may not be set in stone for the Florida State game moving forward, but you feel like that's a pretty good start. Could Charles Turner get beat out? Sure. We thought that last year too. Turned out he was the guy that needed to be in there. But that's a pretty good first 6 to start with. And then you realize that this is what I'm saying. The depth is not quite where you thought it might be, because the transfers out were significant for the depth. Not the front end, but for the depth. Marcus Dumerville went to Maryland. Xavier Hill went to Memphis. Cardell Thomas decided to transfer. Cam Wire went to Tulane. Tremont Shorts lost his eligibility. Well, that's 5 guys right there who were on this roster last year that aren't there now. So you look to your signing class and you really like it from an offensive line perspective. So Lance Hurd is as good an offensive lineman as there was in the class last year. And I think because of what we saw last year with Will Campbell and Emory Jones coming in and being impact, really good players as true freshmen, the urge you would have is to say, all right, well, obviously Lance Hurd will be in there at guard game 1. That's aggressive. I'm not suggesting it's impossible. It's far from it. I would bet against it. You don't want to make your living plug an offensive lineman in right out of the chute. You don't. What I just tell you about Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, most of those guys asserted themselves in their second year. That's if you've got the thing running the way that it should. I think LSU's close to that. So, do I think Zalance Hurd is a better pro prospect than Garrett Dellinger or Charles Turner or Marlon Martinez? I do. Do I think it's a great thing for LSU if he's got to be plugged in immediately? I don't know if it's a great thing for him. We'll see. But you made a move yesterday that helps your depth, which was really vital and not something, as I mentioned, that I've thought about a ton. And you added Mason Lunsford from Maryland. He started 26 games at Maryland at guard positions. 6'5", 305, and a seasoned Big Ten player. God, it's still weird for me all these years later to call Maryland in the Big Ten. It's just not where my brain goes. There's still Juan Dixon and Steve Blake playing in the ACC. Not the case anymore. 26 games in the Big Ten. That's a guy who absolutely can step in and play. I feel, in fact, even though maybe some draft boards or transfer portal analysts or whatever would suggest that Miles Frazier was more ready than Mason Lunsford to help LSU upon arrival, when I consider where Miles Frazier comes from and then I consider where Mason Lunsford comes from, I'm almost more comfortable with the fact that this guy's coming from the Big Ten. So I think he absolutely can help you. So he and Zalance Hurd, you figure, shuffle into the depth and add there. Bo Bordelon has been on campus. He's a big kid, 6'6". And I'm told, well, I'm not told. I shouldn't even say that. I went on the On3 message board yesterday, and Shea Dixon, as he does daily over there at On3 on the Bengal Tiger, said, word is Bo Bordelon is going to work at center. They think that they like his physicality there, and they like his intelligence and his ability to process the information necessary to set protections, and they're going to work him at center a little bit, and probably not a guy who's going to be your starting center this year. Maybe not even your backup center next year, but Charles Turner's going to move on, Garrett Dellinger's going to move on, and you're going to need centers. And Bo Bordelon's going to work there starting here in the spring. So I think that's an important development in the spring. And it's usually things like that in the spring. It's not like, everybody wants to talk about the quarterback competition. Well, Brian Kelly said yesterday it would take a lot of regression from Jaden Daniels and a monster upside from Nussmeier to reshuffle that. It's more about finding a guy a new home, new position, reacclimating somebody to something, installing a system, that kind of stuff in the spring. And so Bo Bordelon's going to move. Then you bring in, as well in this signing class with Hurd, DJ Chester, Tyree Adams, Paul Mabenga, all fit the lean, athletic profile of guys that need to fill out, and I don't know that they're immediately ready to help you, but they do add to the depth of the room and the youth in the room. So you figure Will Campbell, Miles Frazier, Charles Turner, Garrett Dellinger, Marlon Martinez, Emory Jones, Zalance Hurd, Mason Lunsford. That's 8 guys that you feel like can help you right out of the chute. I think that's a good number, not a great number. I don't mean to discount Bordelon, Chester, Adams, Mabenga. They're certainly on the team, and we saw freshmen help you last year. But I'd rather have 10, but 8 is okay. You're not going to go through a regular football season and keep 5 guys healthy. That's just almost impossible. So you're going to need that depth to step in. I feel like compared to what Brad Davis inherited 2 years ago, this is a dream situation. He's done an awesome job recruiting, developing, and they're in a much better spot than they were when he took over 2 years ago. But because of the transfer portal and the amount of guys that 5 guys leave, and only one was because of eligibility, you got to backfill with some younger players. So that's just kind of the way it goes.
Hey, thanks so much for watching the Hunt Palmer Show on YouTube. If you don't mind, throw us a like right below and hit the subscribe button. We'll see you next time.